welcome back. I'm so glad that you came back to join me today for the Monstera Deliciosa extravaganza. So if you are new to Monstera, today I have, this video to help you take care of your plant. If you are a seasoned Monstera owner, I have for you some tips and tricks that might help you either grow a larger Monstera or solve some of the common issues that you may be facing with a Monstera. I am so glad you came back here to join me today. I am here for you every Monday and Thursday. And yeah, hey, by the way, I'm Krista from Plant Lux. I don't know why I forgot to say that, but whatever. So hey, let's get right into it and let's check out some Monstera Deliciosa. So, common issues with Monstera Deliciosa. Some of you may wonder, hey, why are my leaves yellowing or have turned yellow? I will show you from my own personal experience on, some yellowing that I've had and how I have conquered it. So the first sign of yellowing is usually either an overwatering situation or an underwatering situation. So for me, it was an underwatering situation. As you can see here, we have a yellow leaf and we have another one behind it, this little guy right here. And we have one that's sort of just like crispy and dead. Yep, there it is. Bravo. Good plant parenting, right? Okay, so I obviously forgot to water this guy for maybe a couple weeks. And it's been shooting out a lot of growth. The same thing can happen if you are overwatering your plant as well. So just remember that if you have yellowing situation, take note of what your watering regimen is. These plants are very attuned to a schedule. They need that. They need a schedule. So you need to make sure that you're not letting it go bone dry and then overwatering it and then repeating that process. It's not what they like. They like the soil to remain moist, but you should have at least 2 to 3 inches of topsoil that has dried out. But they do not like it to dry completely out though. So that is something to take into consideration with this particular plant. All right, moving on. Another common problem with Monstera Deliciosa are wilty or limp leaves. Wilty or limp leaves are a sign, again, of overwatering or underwatering your plant. So I have an example to show you from a recent propagation that I did. It's right here. I'm just going to bring it up and show you. And as you can see, the leaves, if you could pan in just a little, the leaves are very sad looking. Okay, this is a propagation that I took, and I recently put it in water because I had it in soil and it was unsuccessful. It was wilty like this and it wasn't popping out new growth. And I'm thinking that the broken root, the aerial root, might have something to do with it. So I might have to do it, a snip on the aerial root and just try again in soil. But yes, wilty leaves are generally an indication of over or under watering. And I know that it wasn't being underwatered because the soil was moist in the propagation that I had it in. So the propagation container that I had it in was with this very perky, very happy propagation. It's a 2-stemmer. This guy has been thriving, and I took it out from here, which was right next to it. So, I think it may have been the aerial root. So, if you have some wilty foliage and you haven't propagated, then obviously if it's underwatered or overwatered, you might want to pay attention to that. If it was a propagation that you did, look at the aerial root. You might need to do a little snipping. There might be a little root rot or something going on there. So just kind of note to self. But yeah, this was the original propagation container that it was in. And these two guys are completely thriving and looking amazing. I took this off of my mother plant. And the mother plant is this one right here, this big giant one, okay? Talked about wilting and yellowing of leaves. Okay, good. Okay, so now that we've talked about common issues, what we need to do now is talk about caring for your Monstera Deliciosa. So you get it in the mail or you go to your local nursery and you buy one. What do? So number one is obviously making sure that you properly water the plant. As I said earlier, 2 to 3 inches of the topsoil should be dry before you water it. You do not want to let it go bone dry. So what I do is I stick my finger in the soil and I just test it out, to see if the soil is either cold to my finger or if I feel dampness. Generally speaking though, these big mamas, they dry out pretty quickly. So I have them on a weekly watering regimen. Water it on a regular schedule. If you are new to plants and you don't trust yourself to stick finger in the soil, you're not interested in that, go buy those little plugs that you stick in that like they go white or blue, I'm not sure which. There's lots of different kinds out there, but there are water meters that you can stick in your soil. I don't use those, but that's something that's available to you if you are a person who just doesn't trust yourself to know when to water your plant. Moving on. The next thing you need to remember is these are tropical plants. These plants are used to an environment where there is a lot of humidity, so they thrive in humidity. When there is no humidity present, the leaves will brown on the edges. Now, if you look at this one, when I purchased this plant at a local nursery, they don't have humidifiers there. The browning of the leaves is a sign that there was not a proper source of humidity. So if you're not giving your plant enough humidity, it will yellow, it will brown on the edges, and it's not going to be as happy or prolific at growing or just generally thriving than it would be if you had a humidifier. So that's something that you need to think about when you're purchasing a Monstera. You should also purchase a humidifier because it's absolutely going to be so happy with a humidifier. These guys right here, I have a humidifier blasting at them. So that leads me to the next thing, which is, should I mist the leaves? If I spray the leaves, will that lead to bacteria? Will that lead to rot? Will that lead to disease? Generally speaking with a Monstera, no, not necessarily. I've done it myself. I've got, no qualms about it. If you want to mist your plant with actually by spraying it, that's a lot of work for you, a lot of maintenance. It's easier to just purchase a humidifier that automatically just does it for you. But if you want to mist them, you can do that. All right, let's move on. The next thing I'd like to talk about is lighting. Lighting is very important. Lighting is very important because obviously, more light equals more growth. And more growth, obviously, if you really want that big plant, is what you want. I can't tell you how happy I am when I see a plant baby. So, and as you know, there's 2 or 3 on this guy behind me, which makes me excited even though it's already gigantic. Monsteras, and from my experience anyway, they tend to do well in most any lighting situation. Obviously, more growth is a cause of having, more sunlight, but they usually thrive in any situation from low to bright indirect light. These Monstera that I have here are in a variety of lighting situations, from low to bright indirect sunlight. A note though, if you take your plant outside, it will scorch in the sun. You do not want to have it in direct sunlight. And if you do have very bright beaming direct sunlight coming in through your south-facing window, you might want to pull your Monsteras a little bit back because it will lead to some kind of bleaching on your leaves or some kind of scorching that way. So just kind of note that you don't want to subject your plant to that, obviously. And if you are a person who takes your plants outdoors, just kind of note to self, don't have them in direct sunlight. Okay. I think that about covers the lighting requirements for a Monstera because they really are happy pretty much wherever you place them. Okay? All right. So let's move on to pests. Pests are generally not an issue for Monstera, but you do need to check your plant at least, I would say, once every 2 weeks at least. I check mine every time I water them, which is once a week. The condition of your plant does determine the amount of stress it has and perhaps then what pests are involved. Or let's say you go to your local nursery, you get some plants and you're super happy, and maybe you don't shower them off, maybe you don't treat them, maybe you just introduce them into your home and all of a sudden, oops, spider mites, okay, because that's happened to me, of course. If that happens to you, okay, I'm very sorry, I know it's hard, but spider mites or mealybugs or scale are sort of a common problem with these plants when they get it. Now, I'm not saying that these are insect prone, because there's not a lot of pest pressures with these plants, but you do have to be aware and you do have to look for those pests. Again, those pests were mealybugs, spider mites, and scale. Those are the top three, okay? So, with scale, you're gonna wanna look on the trunks. And I have done that, not the trunk, they're not called trunks, the stems. Okay, you're gonna wanna look at the stems. And I have found some scale on my plants, and they came from the nursery, wherever I ordered them from. All right, and you just take a knife and you scrape it off a little bit. You have to be very careful not to cut into the stem though, so you're gonna have to like really razor thin if you're gonna do that method, or use your fingernail. Okay, you have to be very gentle though, because you could hurt the plant, obviously. So the scale, again, you can scrape it off, treat it with neem oil, but scale is just not the kind that you can just spray with neem oil and think it's gonna go away. You actually have to scrape it off. Mealybugs, I suggest changing the soil out, spraying it with neem oil, treating it for probably about 2 months, Spider mites, I've had pressures of spider mites, and you'll usually see the webbing in the fenestrations or in the splits, and you'll see it very easily. It's very easy to get rid of. To avoid spider mites, shower your plants once a month. That's what I do. And then I also just treat them even if they don't have pest pressures once a week or twice a week. Or if I'm really, really lazy, once a month, I try to spray it down with neem oil. It makes the leaves absolutely beautiful. They love it. They benefit from it. It's not going to harm the plant, so don't worry about that. But you're going to want to make sure you're looking at your plant every time you're caring for it, because as you know, spider mites suck sap. That's what they do. They're sap suckers. They're terrible little, tiny little creatures. We don't like spider mites, okay? Spray it off in the shower, or now it's like the summertime, so you could spray it off with a hose outside. Spray it off, treat it with neem oil. Do that a couple times if you have the pest pressures of spider mites. If you see scale, obviously you're gonna have to scrape it off, still treat it with neem oil. If you see mealybugs, pick them off, spray it with neem oil. I would suggest replacing the soil, because those little critters lay eggs and ew, they're nasty. Blah. So I would just try to get rid of all that nasty egg soil and spray it, treat it with hydrogen peroxide. I will post a video on how to completely sanitize your soil if you're worried about too much shock to your plant from getting soil away from your roots. Anyway, look for that video in the future. All right, I think that covers the pest pressures for this plant. Moving on to fertilization. If you are new to my channel, hi. But I use Jax. Everyone knows that watches Plant Lux. I am a Jax person. It's a synthetic fertilizer. If you are into organic fish emulsion, worm castings, seaweed, whatever, cool, that's awesome. I totally support you. That's great. What I use though is Jax. It works for me, and that's what I use. So, yeah. I do it on a constant fertilization regimen every time I water my plants. I follow the package directions. I don't dilute it beyond that. I just follow what the package directions say, which is per gallon, 1/4 teaspoon. That is what I do. It's that simple. Now, fertilization. Have I experimented a little bit? Yes, I have. Okay, so the only experimentation that I've done with these guys is I have used some root growth hormone mixed with Jax, and I've sprayed it on the aerial roots. We're gonna pan in and show you some of my results in a moment. Why did I do that? Well, because when I first invested in Monstera, what I wanted was a Monstera plant that was gigantic. Obviously, I got what I wanted, okay? But I want you to know that it didn't come, this did not come from my experiments. This just came from my constant Jax fertilization method and putting it in proper lighting and giving it excellent humidity at all times. This is the result of excellent humidity, Jax, and lighting. So just so you know, the experiment with the aerial root and the spraying and all that, that's separate. I don't know what that did because I wasn't consistent with it, but I will share with you that I did try that. And I'm gonna show you that in just a second. All right, so let's go look at that right now, I guess, because I don't have anything else to say about that. So guys, I mean, okay, you're gonna get aerial roots anyway, all right? You're going to, no matter what. What I did was I experimented with putting root growth hormone in with the Jax into the watering container, and I was watering it. What I also experimented with was spraying the aerial roots with the treatment, you know, whenever I felt like it. Sometimes it was twice a week, sometimes it was once a week, sometimes it was once every 2 weeks. I really was just experimenting, but not consistently, because if I was really serious about it, I would have kept track. But I will say this, I got this plant no fewer than, I would say, I want to say it was October, November, or December. It was somewhere in there, and now it's June, and it is giant. Okay, there's 2 plants here. There's one here, and there's one here. I was spraying the aerial roots, and now they are huge. And when this plant came, it was like this big. So I mean, I honestly can't say that it's one thing that led to this kind of aerial root growth, but if you can kind of see, this is a brand new shoot. This leaf just sprouted. This right here just sprouted, I would say a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. This is a brand new one too. And these are coming out now. So I'm thinking it's because of the Jax and the lighting. I have it in a window. So what I'm saying is, if you're looking to grow a huge Monstera, you know, the aerial roots are part of the equation. Do not cut these off. Okay, if you don't like them, just put them in the soil and wrap them around and let them find their way. Do not cut them off though, okay? If your plant becomes too large, my next topic is propagation. So if your plant becomes too large, it's too beast-like, it's stretching out way too far, then you know you're gonna want to propagate this at a node. Okay, this is a node right here where you see this bulbous area and you see these aerial roots. You could cut it here if you wanted. You could cut it again here if you wanted. You have 2 separate propagations and put them in a pot or put them in water, whichever you prefer. So propagation's not rocket science. So you cut below the node. Nodes here, bulbous part right here, aerial roots. Cut. I would just cut it down here and stick it. Okay, because you can see there's a lot of points of aerial root growth. And then if you wanted to take this other section, so this would be one propagation, and then this would be a separate propagation, you would cut here. Now, you've also got this guy. So you could, if you wanted to, cut down here. But remember, in order to propagate, you have to have the bulbous section with the aerial root. in order to have the most successful propagation. So another way to get a giant is to up pot. That's what I did with the guy behind me that I just showed you. When I received him crushed in the mail, I received 2 plants because they just kept coming crushed. I put them in a giant pot, up potted them. I used some stakes to stake them up, try to save them. It was like a rescue mission. Let's just say though that, you know, that's not your situation. You just want a big giant Monstera. You know, take 2 separate plants, stick them in a giant pot, bam. All right, up potting your Monstera, while they do enjoy being root bound, you know, the bigger pot they have, they'll grow the pot. So, you know, just kind of take that into consideration. If you give them a big pot, you know, they're gonna get big pretty quick. For soil, it's not rocket science here. I use Miracle Grow potting mix. I get it in the store. You can use whatever you want, but I try not to overcomplicate my plant therapy, my plant life, my plant enjoyment. Do I want to try to experiment with making my own soil? Sure, why not? But so far, I just really don't have a complaint about using the bagged Miracle Grow potting mix. It's just my tried and true thing. It always has worked for me. So that's what I use. It's just easy. That's what we want. Easy, right? Okay. So easy soil, easy day. Something you want to think about whether you are a beginner at this plant or if you are a seasoned veteran with this plant. The stress is the key. Inconsistent watering regimen is where it all begins. That causes a lot of problems. So you can set your timer on your phone. You could set a calendar to remind you to water it. You could get those little water monitors that you stick in the soil. Those are some really good ways to remember to water your plant consistently to avoid stressing the plant, because the stress happens when it goes bone dry and then you soak it and it goes bone, it doesn't like that. It likes to stay consistently moist to a point. That top 2 to 3 inches has to be dry before you water it. So just keep that in mind, okay? You don't want to stress your Monstera. Monsteras that are stressed are susceptible to disease and pests, and you don't want pests or disease. Now, that's not to say that pests can't come from outside sources like they did to my home, because I'm always bringing new plants in. So when you bring new plants in, sometimes you open the door for pests. Unfortunately, that's what happens. And if that happens, it's okay. Put them in the shower, take them outside, hose them down, treat them with neem oil. Neem oil is not going to hurt your plants. I will link the neem oil extract that I use in the description below. I always keep a giant supply of neem oil, and then I make my own in a separate container because you can't just use extract. It's too strong. So you're going to put just a half a teaspoon of extract in a quart-sized container with a little dab of dish soap, and there you go, because you know the water and the dish soap emulsify, the neem oil and the dish soap and the water create emulsification that makes for the best treatment for this plant. You don't have to spend $10 for a tiny bottle of that solution. You can be making your own. Save yourself a bunch of money and get the extracts and make your own. Okay, great. So yeah, so here's my jungle. And if you are into jungle homes, and if you're into boho vibes, and if you're into all of this amazing, Monstera Deliciosa-ness, yeah, that's awesome. You should be. It's cool. Oh, I forgot to mention the Thai constellation, which is a super, rare plant because it's like an anomaly in the Monstera family. I have it down here. So this guy has a little bit different care requirements because of the variegation. You can't put it in direct sunlight because of the white or the yellowish cream colored parts of the leaves. Everything else I said applies to this plant. It's just that you cannot have it in direct sunlight because you will get this effect. Okay, this came damaged because of the way it was packaged, but you cannot do it or else that will happen. Constellation is in, a variegation of the Monstera. It is expensive, yeah, okay. But these are super fun to have. I highly recommend owning one of these. And if you want to know where to get one, I might be able to help you out there too. But these guys are usually slower growers. They're not going to be as prolific as, you know, your Monstera, but these are a lot faster growers than the elbow Monstera, which is a different altogether. Anyway, thank you for joining me today on my video. I so appreciate you coming back here and spending some time with me and learning you know, something about Monstera. If you didn't learn anything today, well, darn. But I'm so happy that you watched nonetheless. I am here for you every Monday and Thursday, and I hope that you come back and join me again to see, you know, whatever I'm doing in my plant journeys and adventures. I so appreciate it. And, you know, hey, I hope you're having some fun with your plants. I know I am. So join me for some Planty adventures. If you have any ideas, tell me in the description below, because I really want to hear them. And yeah, it helps me create video content that you want to see and hear. So please share it with me. And yeah, so thanks again for hanging out with me and talking about some of my jungle plants. If you don't have a jungle, hello, go out and get one. Does this not look amazing? Yes, it does. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you back here next time. Bye.